Citroën C3's Air of Safety, November 29, 2017. The C3's Air Bumps, a 290 pounds option on everything other than our top trim Flair, are, in my mind, a good-looking addition to the car and a key differentiator versus rivals. There's the practical side too. I feel much happier leaving the C3 in tight car parks than previous cars, knowing that other motorists are less likely to leave lasting damage on it. A trip to Crewe to see the new Bentley Continental GT loomed, and I toyed with the idea of swapping the C3 for one of the more suitable long-distance cars on our test fleet. But in the end, I didn't, deciding that this was an excellent opportunity to see how the C3 fared outside of its urban remit. It's fair to say it didn't have the comfort or refinement of a Bentley Grand Tourer, but then what do you expect at a fraction of the price? Nonetheless, Citroën has a sharp focus on offering comfortable cars, and the C3 absolutely bears that out. There are very few cars in which I don't get fidgety or suffer from the common affliction of numb bum on a 100-mile-plus journey. But with the C3, it never happened. I was happy all the way to Crewe and back to London again, via the Cotswolds. Even better, the C3's bench-like seats, inspired by those in the C4 Cactus, look different from almost every other car makers out there. So they're not only incredibly comfortable but also original in design. A few weeks later, I headed to the depths of Suffolk for a yoga retreat. From my house, there is not the luxury of a direct motorway route. Instead, I traversed motorways, A roads and B roads before a final stretch on the never-ending A143. The C3 can also hold its own on higher speed long journeys. Our car's 1.2-liter PureTech 110 engine is the most powerful in the range. That equates to a 0 to 62 miles per hour of 9.3 sec, not enough to do more than moderately paced motorway cruising, but sufficient. To get up to speed requires some persistent foot-down driving, but it's never to the point where you feel that you're desperately willing the C3 to accelerate more quickly. The other upside of long-distance journeys in the C3 is also the biggest downside for its natural environment of towns and cities. The gearbox feels notchy and rough when changing through its lower cogs. This makes stop-start urban journeys less fluid than you'd hope. So, of course, with no low-end gear changing necessary out of town, this isn't a factor. The Citroën also has firm rear suspension, which causes it to crash hard over speed bumps. That's unavoidable to an extent on roads like the one on which I live, which have the worst kind of speed bumps, but rival hatchbacks such as the Ford Fiesta feel better damped. Again, this is much less of a factor on longer journeys outside towns. So I've touched on its